started streaming again. BPS, bitrate, set to 500. Let me minimize that, bring up a bit of text. How's the new stream looking? If I activate the stream on my PC in my browser to see myself, presumably I'll get a bit of echo and feedback. But will I see it? Let's see, drop frames. No, actually, no drop frames. Excellent. I might just turn on the stream. Oh, yep, I can hear myself, and I can see myself as well. Always going to get a bit of feedback in out. Yep, I can hear myself, and I can see myself as well. Always going to get a bit of feedback in out. Yep, I can hear myself, and I can see myself as well. Right, I'll stop that. Yes, I'm going to have to figure out how this all works, because I'm speaking, but I'm reading comments in the text, so I can answer by speaking. Yes, I have 3 monitors. I've got a Mac sitting in the middle. It's just outputting to 1 monitor, and 2 either side are on my PC. I can switch between 3 on the PC if I need to, and I use Synergy to so you can type for it. Synergy to share my mouse and keyboard between monitors, and I can copy and paste between them as well. It's really good. So I'm also getting a bit of text from Live Coding TV. We've added the streaming schedule. You can add next time your stream. You can add next time so your viewers know when you show up. Ah, okay, cool. Yeah. Yes, Synergy is really great. I've used it for years. It just basically lets you use multiple computers with a single keyboard and mouse. It doesn't share the screens. You still have to have outputs, video outputs going to the monitors, and you have to use the monitor inputs to switch between them. But it's pretty good indeed. It's a cryptocurrency community. Oh, I have no idea. I don't do cryptocurrency. Anyway, I'm supposed to be programming an old game, or remaking an old game I did many years ago. I'm Steve Longhurst. You can search the web and find longsteve.com. A bit about me. I'm LongSteve on Twitter, and I've been coding for many years. Going to try and do some live coding now. This is actually a bit of a test for me. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I agreed to it when I met with a group of people in Southampton called Share Up Sutton. It's a small group of people who have agreed to do something, make code on the internet, just about produce things and actually commit to doing stuff, and then check each other out each month to see what we've done. It's all very well having a blog and updating it every 3 years. That's pretty much the last time mine was updated until a couple of days ago. But what we decided to do was actually make ourselves do things. So let's quit that, lose SlickEdit for a moment. Yes, so 25 years. I haven't really been commercially programming 25 years. 25 years ago was my Sinclair Spectrum and my Sam Coupe. If you've ever heard of a Sam Coupe, look it up if you haven't heard of one. It was basically TV screen and me typing in things from magazines, and that was when I was young. Been programming for longer than Tony's been alive. Never mind. There's plenty of years to go yet. After I programmed on my Sinclair Spectrum, I took a degree course at Southampton University and basically learned to program properly using C and C++, did Java as well then for a little bit. Then I got a job at IBM and did commercial programming, mainframes, banking systems, you name it, for some years. Then after that, I went and joined a small company down in South Hampshire here, near Southampton, doing games for mobile phones. Programmed in Java for many years, and then we switched to smartphones, and then went on and used C++ and iOS, Objective-C, JavaScript, done a lot of that these days. Punch cards. No, never used punch cards. I did see some when I was at IBM. Never actually got to use them. Although I really love watching YouTube videos of people restoring old computers from the museums, computer history museum, things like that. Right, anyway, so all the games I did over many years, one of them was called AquaStax, and it was my favourite game. It was a 2D puzzle game, block dropping. The tagline was "Think Tetris meets Lemmings." What I've got here is a little GIF animation of it, if I can find it. So I had it up earlier. Got to do a few things. AquaStax. Here we go. GIF animation. So the idea of my live stream is going to be to recreate this. I played around with the old source code recently. It's very old. It's not great, and it's also in Java J2ME. It doesn't run on anything now. If you've got a Sony Ericsson K750 or any of the 100 or so Java phones that we produced builds for, if you can even find the files to install on it and run, then you're doing a good job. There are a couple of YouTube videos floating around. They're not great though. Anyway, this puzzle game was going to be... I played around with Codename 1, which is a Java J2ME system for building for modern platforms. Played around with it for a little bit, a couple of days, got the thing running on my iPhone, but it had lots of problems, you know, screen scaling, touch input, no audio, all that kind of stuff. But it proved that it worked, but I didn't really want to go down that route. I wanted to learn something while I was doing it and not just learn how to rewrite or how to port my old J2ME code to a new platform. Still using J2ME, what I wanted to do was write JavaScript code using a modern system, and in particular I'm going to be using Cocos2d-JS, part of the Cocos2d-X family. If you haven't come across Cocos2d-X, go to cocos2dx.org. We'll have a look in the window here. What's that page doing? Oh, that's my GitHub repo. I'll talk about that a bit later on. Nothing in it yet, of course, because the project hasn't even been started. So Cocos2d-X, I've used Cocos2d-X a little bit in the past. We've used it in my last job for some pretty big projects on iPhone, Android, PC, web, you name it. Does a really good job. I could have used Unity, but I decided I wanted to do something in 2D and learn and still use JavaScript. Unity doesn't work so well with JavaScript still. And I'm going to use Cocos2d-X and rewrite my old source code to make AquaStax again. It's probably going to take me months, if not years. Maybe I'll stream once a week. Maybe I'll get a chance to do it a bit more. Times might change as well. As I said earlier, first time I've ever done this. Afternoon might be a bad time because fairly soon the kids, not my kids, but local kids are going to be coming home from school and playing in their gardens and screaming in the back window. Might be better off to do it in the morning as well when I look a bit more presentable. A bit sweaty this afternoon. You can probably tell by my shiny face in the camera. Anyway, time to start coding. Oh, also, you'll have to forgive the lack of professional equipment. I'm streaming via my webcam using the webcam audio here as well. It's basically just all I've got at the moment. I'm going to learn as I go along, figure out better quality equipment. Lots of typing, you'll probably hear it all. So I wrote down a few things I was going to mention, but we might as well start by installing Cocos2d-X. My Mac is pretty clean here. I haven't used it for a while. Done a little bit of playing around, so you'll probably find some files floating around doing stuff. I also have the original J2ME source code. I won't go into that just yet, but we'll do a bit of looking at that later. One of the reasons I wanted to do an old project was because when you're streaming coding here, there's going to be stuff on the screen, but it's either going to be code I'm writing, or it's going to be nothing on the screen because I'm thinking about something. And if I'm thinking, I'm probably going to have to force myself to speak and vocalize my thoughts as I go along, because you'll be listening. But also, I figured if there was code that I'm thinking about that I wrote a long time ago that I'm trying to understand again, I can have that on the screen, and I can be transferring it from one old programming language into a new programming language. And at least there'll be something going on, rather than me writing new code, so taking a brand new project from scratch that hadn't been done before. There'll be lots of thinking time, whereas hopefully this will be less thinking time, more coding time. Although to start with, there's going to be a whole lot of project configuration and setup going on. These things always take a long time to get up to speed for when you're writing actual code. I thought about spending weeks preparing all this so I could start writing code with a fully formed project, but part of the learning process, which I want to share with everybody, is how this is all going to work and what you do to use Cocos2d-X and Cocos2d-JS in particular. So, you'll forgive me if I don't say hello to everybody joining in the rooms. I might just type hello in my window here. Thanks for joining. I'm still learning how this goes. I'm sure there are all sorts of tools I can use that will pop up people's names on the screen when they join and do stuff and basically distract you from everything. Anyway, do you explain along in your streams? Well, I don't know, I haven't done any streams yet. This is literally the first one I have ever done. So what I'm going to do now is install Cocos2d-X. I have a projects folder on my Mac, and in it I've got a folder called AquaStax. So far in there is my original J2ME AquaStax source, which I will just open up briefly here so you can see some of it. Let's see some sprites there. I'll go through a bit of this later on if there's time, or in the next stream. Here's some of the old source code in Java. We'll get rid of that. I've got an empty GitHub project which is on GitHub. If you go to GitHub long-Steve AquaStax, there I am. There's a link in the Live Coding TV page. Nothing in there at the moment. I'll hopefully be committing stuff to that at the end of every stream, if not very shortly after the end of every stream. Even if it doesn't work, I'm going to stick it up there so people can have a look at it. Submissions welcome, pull requests, anything you like, questions. Part of the development process is collaborating with other people, so certainly stream merging pull requests if anybody wants to write any code. Chances are that's going to be a long time coming though, because there's not going to be much to show just yet. Right, so Cocos2d-X. I did already download it into my downloads folder, and that is going to be here. And it's a zip file. I guess it is. You've got to extract it somewhere. I'm going to put it into my AquaStax folder. Everything's going to go in there. Link off the desktop. Unzip it. I have the instructions on what to do with it in my PC on another window here. I won't show you those. You can go and look at it. Go to the GitHub Cocos2d-X page. Not going to need that anymore. Diving in. Right. So, my favourite terminal, cathode. I will zoom in on this. Hopefully you can see what's going on. So, where are we? CD project, AquaStax, and Cocos2d-X 3.13.1. That's the latest version. And to set it up, you have to run setup.py. And what is it going to do? It does a bunch of environment variables, and it's going to point everything to my projects, AquaStax, Cocos2d-X, etc. folders. Might change that later on. Let's see, and leave it like it is. Do you want to enter the path of the Android SDK? I don't have an Android SDK. Well, I do, but I don't want to use it yet. At some point in the future, once we've got a bit of code on the screen, I will probably look at doing Android and iOS and web builds. Certainly done lots of iOS and Android programming over the years, so that would be certainly very interesting to do. Triple monitor setup. Yes, I'm only streaming off the one monitor, which is my Mac. Other two monitors, one here and one here, are my PC. Not doing very much at the moment. Basically just a clock and a couple of web browsers that I don't want to clutter onto the Mac desktop. Anyway, let's skip that. It's updated my bash profile. So let's just quit this. Gotta minimize the window. Quit cathode. And start again. I like the look of the old school terminals. I've actually got a VT220 terminal sitting on my desk just here, just off camera view. Use it occasionally. Real hardware terminal. So we want to Cocos is the command. Having installed it, it should run. Excellent, it does. So this is the generic tool that lets you create projects, compile them, run them, do stuff. And we want to create a new project. So let us. Oh, my Amazon Echo has just powered up. Here's the thing I've got to do. I've got to have a checklist of things to do before I start streaming in. One of them will be turn my Amazon Echo off. If you're wondering why I've got an Amazon Echo in the UK and they only announced them yesterday and haven't released them yet. It's because I ordered one from the internet from a friend of mine who lives in the States and imported it at the beginning of the year. Fantastic. Get yourself an Amazon Echo. I'm sure I'll be doing some programming on that pretty soon. Anyway, where were we? We were going to create a new project. Cocos. Start a new game. Looking at the web browser for a web game. Here we go. So Cocos, new, -l.js, and I'm going to call it AquaStax. Let's see what it does. Tells me the folder already exists. No, it doesn't. Is already exist. Fantastic. I wonder if it's. I bet it's decided that AquaStax J2ME is the wrong name. Then actually, let's call it something else. Let's call it J2ME. AquaStax. Let's try that again. No. See project AquaStax already. No, it doesn't. I'm in users Steve projects AquaStax. The AquaStax folder is already exist. Oh, it's probably case insensitive, isn't it? Let's just remove the AquaStax folder. Now that's my GitHub repository. Actually, what I want to do is go in there, don't I? Because I'm going to actually create code and submit it to GitHub. Let's try that again in here. Oh, there we go. Right. Literally never done this before. Starting from scratch. Copying, it's copying lots of Cocos2d-JS files. My guess now is that it's duplicating a whole load of boilerplate and stuff, creating a standalone project for me. Luckily I won't have to compile anything because it's all JavaScript. If it was an iOS or an Android project. Now we've got an AquaStax subfolder in there. Probably don't want too many AquaStax subfolders, do I? Let's go back. Let's move everything back up here. Okay. AquaStax, not empty. Oh, alright, hidden files. There we go, project file. What's in that? Little project file, move that as well. Dot Cocos. And we get rid of that. Right, now we're in. Okay, now somewhere it tells me how to run it. Oh, looking back at the web page, Cocos run -p project name. Might as well give that a go. Let's minimize this. It's presumably going to fire up a web browser for me. Cocos run -p AquaStax. Unknown platform. Okay. Oh, it's -l. No, it's not. -p web. There we are. Right. Starting a server on localhost, port 8000. Loading a load of stuff up. Oh, and it's fired up. The Hello World project. Fantastic. So this is. Let's see what it's given us. We have AquaStax. So we've got CMake list file. Here's the index.html. We'll have a look at that in a minute. Main.js, web app stuff, project JSON. Oh, what's in that? Well, let's just open it up. So, one of the things I do is I use Visual SlickEdit. Well, it used to be called Visual SlickEdit. It's now just called SlickEdit. If you ever have a project that needs an editor that runs on all the platforms, so you know if you're using multi-platform development, it's all very well. You can use Visual Studio on Windows, you can use Xcode on Mac, Linux, you can use whatever you like, compile things with GCC and edit in Emacs or VI, do whatever you want. But SlickEdit runs on all those platforms and half a dozen other ones. I've used SlickEdit since probably about 2004, 2005. Have a subscription to their monthly support package, which is about, yearly support package, about $120 for the multi-platform version. Only $60 for single platform versions, pretty good value, and with that you get updates year in, year out. Don't need updates, you can keep running on one version for as long as you like. It's pretty good. It will load all sorts of project files from all sorts of different things, but I'm going to start a brand new one. In fact, what I'm going to do to start with is just have a look at some of these files, because I don't know what's in them. Project JSON. That looks pretty straightforward. Hopefully you can see this. I'm just going to start my stream again, look at myself, go and monitor the thing, see what's going on. Hopefully the text is big enough and readable enough. Let's simulate on full screen. Gonna get a bit of echo now. SlickEdit runs on all those platforms and half a dozen other ones. I've used SlickEdit since probably about 2000. Oh, it's a bit of a delay on the stream, probably because of the buffering and so on. When it comes up, then I'll close it out again. For the multi-platform version, only $60 for single platform version is pretty good value, and with that you get updates year in, year out. Don't need updates, you can keep running on one version for as long as you like. It's pretty good. It will load all sorts. I'm not speaking at the moment, I'm just waiting for myself to catch up on my stream. Again, I'm still learning how this works, so a bit of testing should be good. Ah, here we go. I'm looking at my own code now via the video stream from my Mac, going off to the internet, livecoding.tv, and then coming back down to my PC. It looks reasonably readable. Certainly it's scaled. Bit rates and limitations on that, I think, I suppose. Gonna get a bit of echo now. Okay, stop watching that. Excellent. Right. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the stuff that Cocos2d, the tool, created for me with a brand new project. Basically, it's Hello World project. Does that. Somewhere in here it's going to have kicked off. Oh, this is the main.js, a brief explanation for project JSON. Okay, so here's the content. So it's just a bunch of project settings, debug mode, show FPS, frame rate, no cache. Set whether your resources will be loaded with a timestamp suffix in the URL. That's probably pretty useful. Loads of URL caching problems occur on browsers when developing stuff. Modules for Cocos2d, yeah, we'll pull in some of that later. And the on-game start function looks like it loads Cocos loading. It's probably going to set something in a loading screen. Test if we care about retina displays on iPhone devices, adjusting viewports and stuff. 960 by 640, we'll probably end up changing that at some point. Browser size, load resources, and then run the game. Right, and it creates a new Hello World scene, which probably comes out of another file. No, I don't want Launchpad, I want Finder. Source, going to be in here, isn't it? App.js. Oh, no, I don't want to open it up in the Apple Watch simulator. I want to load it in SlickEdit. Right. Hello World. Okay, all the usual stuff. So it's all pretty nice JavaScript. Nice and boilerplate. We'll rip most of this out. Let's just change something there. Hello. LiveCoding.tv. Viewers. Now let's see what happens if I refresh. Yay, hello LiveCoding.tv viewers, that's pretty good. One thing I will definitely set up when I get a bit more into it is some kind of auto load system. Done a lot of front-end JavaScript using Angular and jQuery and other things to write front-end dashboards and what have you in the past. Some kind of auto refresh feature is really handy, so literally whenever you save a file, the web browser display or your debugging display refreshes straight away. In fact, talking about debugging, let's have a look. I'm using Safari here. We'll probably switch to Chrome at some point soon. In fact, I might do that now, see what it looks like. Launchpad, Chrome. Hopefully I'm not speaking too fast for anybody. Do let me know if I am. I tend to wrap it on a bit quick. One of the hazards of being British. No, I need to do this. Control C. Question, what do I use for scripting? Oh, well, I was talking about, do you mean programming the scripting code in, like SlickEdit, or just languages? Personally, I've used Bash. I like Linux a lot. My PC dual boots Linux and Windows, so Bash. Python I've used quite a bit for scripting. JavaScript, actually, to be honest, I've used a lot of JavaScript, and it's just a case of when you start using JavaScript, it's everywhere. So program your servers in Node.js and JavaScript. Write JavaScript for your front ends in web browsers. Write your scripts in JavaScript, again Node.js. JavaScript on the mobile devices. Cocos2d-JS will let us compile this JavaScript game we're going to write and run it on iPhones and Androids and other things. Pretty much never need to use anything else, so it's JavaScript all the way. Lots of really useful command line tools hook into JavaScript as well, so you can use underscore and async and all the various command line, Node.js libraries from a command line. JSON parsing, trivial command line JSON parsing. Done a whole load of Amazon Web Services work. Might get to do a bit of that on the stream if I'm hosting this somewhere. AquaStax.com currently doesn't point to anywhere, just my blog, but it will at some point host the game as we code it. So I'll probably stick that on Amazon Web Services. Should probably put a few of these extra keywords in the stream, shouldn't I, to make sure people can find it. Anyway, I was about to try this sample code inside Chrome. There we go. Yeah, so there's a loading screen and it pops up and shows us the same thing. We won't worry about that for now. Chrome, we use Chrome a bit heavier later on, probably for debugging. I'm quite partial to Firefox as well. Yeah, I was playing my live stream for a bit there. Yeah, just needed to double check things were still working. Also, I can do that and mute the volume, can't I? Anyway, let's kill that for a second. Anyway, for anyone who's just joined and want to know what I'm aiming at, this was my game. So AquaStax. So there we go. We've got a sample project, Cocos2d-JS. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Now I want to talk a little bit about what I'm actually going to attempt to do. So AquaStax was a game I wrote 10, 11 years ago maybe now. 2D block dropping game, so you've got different shaped blocks drop from the top of the screen, you manipulate them and drop them down, and then you make block based towers and constructions for these little guys to climb up, and the idea is to rescue as many of the guys as there are on the screen to start with. There's also an infinite mode as well, where you just keep going up and up until the water reaches them, and then they drown. So it's pretty harsh actually. They drown if they get in, if you let the water touch them. I have another example here. There's some fancy music as well. I hope this is actually showing okay on the stream. The frame rate might be a bit low for it, but we'll. There's a couple of videos on the internet. What did I click there? Open with preview app. No, don't do that. Open with Safari. There we go. I think that's the same one actually, isn't it? That was number 1. Number 2. Show. Open with Safari. No, they're both the same GIFs. Oh well. By the way, I think it's GIF, not GIF. Anyone who says otherwise, I don't care. Oh, and spaces, not tabs. We'll get around to that at some point. Programming setups. Anyway, so I have the original source code because I wrote this. As to licensing, do I still own the rights to make this game? I probably don't, but I don't think anybody's going to care. And if they do, then we'll just worry about it and change projects and do something else if they care. They may like to pay me for it once I finished it. You never know. But I'm doing this for fun. So we're going to have a quick look at some of the old source code, just so you know what you're getting into. Here's some new source code that I didn't write. It was created for me. We don't need those. And let's fire up the some of the early source code. So I wrote this in Java. We wrote games in Java on mobile phones. So if you had a Sony Ericsson K750, a Nokia, as early as a Nokia 7650, one of the first camera phones, or a Nokia 7210, little square 128 by 128 pixel screen, and we wrote loads and loads of mobile games. At some point I've got a picture I can show of all of them, and this is the original project source. I don't have a way to run it anymore. We used to have some simulators which would show you mobile phone screens on the screen, just like the iOS simulator does now. Works really well. Let's see, you can see a pretty big source file. So AquaStax and AquaStax 2. So one of the problems we used to have back in the day was that mobile devices ran out of memory if you had class files that were too big. So we split them up into 2. So AquaStax and AquaStax 2. Let's just have a look. So Infospace, that's the company I used to work for. Pretty sure they don't do mobile games anymore. And JavaScript code. I'm not going to go all the way through this, we'll just flash around. I may or may not, I don't think I can make it available really, but you're going to see plenty of it in the stream as the weeks go by. There's lots of constants, public static finals. You'll see lots of shift operators all over the place. We use bit fields everywhere. This was AquaStax would actually run on a Nokia Series 40 device, which had just under 200 kilobytes of RAM. The bundle size for the source code and the actual downloadable jar file, as it was called, which is just a zip file that they used for installing games with, was I think 64K. So the whole game had to fit in 64K. That's code and resources, and then at runtime it could use no more than 200K of RAM. The screen was 128 by 128, so that's like the lowest end device we supported. Higher end devices, big Sony Ericssons, could have 320 by 240 displays, 500K plus of download size with, you know, sort of 500K RAM probably as well. I can't actually remember. Anyway, there's a lot of code in here which actually splits out the functionality and the logic for different devices. So for example, if you play AquaStax on a Sony Ericsson K750, you'd get nice collapsing physics-like activities when the stack collapsed. You could break bits of the stack and it would all fall around itself. On a low-end Nokia, it didn't do any of that. The blocks would just stay where they were because the physics code was too big to fit, and you couldn't do it. All of the resources, the sprites were cut down, fewer animation frames, smaller sound effects, you name it. I think there was a smaller number of levels as well. Original game had 50 levels actually, which we should all get in. Anyway, excellent bit of code there. So here I am looking at code I haven't seen in a long time. Wanger. Wanger, I think, is the thing that generates the little bounce at the beginning of the splash screen. You see the little AquaStax block come down. Is it still got it here? Let's load it up again. And you can see history. There we go. Ah, it didn't. Anyway, if you play the game, that little block bounces around as part of the splash screen, and a thing called the Wanger decides how that happens. Also, you'll notice, if you look in this code, there are no floating point variables anywhere. There's nothing, no floats. Floats, although I think they existed on some mobile phones, but not all of them, were really slow. So you couldn't use floating points. So any maths going on here is going to be fixed point. Also, very little use of class and object hierarchies and things. Everything's basically arrays. So what have we got? Oh, pathfinding code. Yes, I wrote some A* pathfinding code for the Gumblers, because, oh, I haven't even mentioned Gumblers yet, have I? So the little guys, they're called Gumblers. They walk around and decide to climb up your stack if you're lucky. There's a fairly hefty section of AI which determines what they do. There's a very extensive sprite animation system that I created, which has all the animations for doing stuff. Lots of state transitions for animations. You can see them doing all sorts of things there. Anyway, they hang around and they fall off and they get attacked by baddies, aliens and what have you. I might tell you about the original Gumbler in a future stream. You might even watch one day, you never know. Look a bit more at this code. Lots of configuration and setup. Lots of resources got loaded at runtime as data arrays. Game objects, seagulls, these are the hazards. Game objects, Gumblers, exits, levels. So the scripting system that I wrote, which allowed our designers to create all sorts of levels for this, was pretty comprehensive as well. I wrote a full-on scripting language which allowed them to create and design all the levels. You never know, if we end up with that working and game creation, level design being a thing in the remake of the game, then that'd be really good. Lots of new levels, sort of thing that you can post on the internet and download other people's levels. Anyway, so lots of XY coordinates. So I mentioned fixed point mathematics. We'll go into fixed point at some point in the future. I'm going to have to gen up on that and remember it all. So lots of shifting up and down by 8. If they're doing things, triangle drawing. Oh yeah, we had lots of triangle drawing for the tiles because they were like equilateral triangles made up the tile set. So there was you could make 2 triangles turn it into a square. Here's the init function. Set up the AquaStax game engine for the first time. Lots of loading progress going on. Init. Oh, then we jump into AquaStax 2 for the Gumbler animation system. That's probably a large chunk of code that had to be split out to make the class files, the Java class files that are the binaries for Java, smaller. Reset functions. Anyway, there's a whole lot of stuff here. I'm not going to go through that now. We'll get to that in the future as I translate different bits from the old code to the new. I might just see if there's anything else of interest in here. So, And one of the things that we had to do on the old mobile phones was make different code for the different devices which had different features. So you'd have MIDP, which was the sort of basic mobile information device protocol, I think that was called, or mobile information device profile, yeah. And that was the early version of the mobile phone standard, which didn't have things like transparency in PNG files. All the graphics are PNGs, you'll see a bunch of those in a minute. There's lots of features that the newer phones had, like drawing geometry, drawing polygons, sprite features, transparency, different audio, all that sort of stuff. Early on you could pretty much do like draw rectangle, draw line, fill rectangle. I think they had a fill and draw circle, but we never used those because circles were really slow for drawing. Anyway, so you had to have a set of code. If I have a look in here, we'll probably find some rendering routines which used old MIDP code, water API. So we didn't have water on the on some of them, or if we did, it was probably just a line drawn across the screen. It wasn't actually any transparent water. So the water, I remember the water being transparent, so it definitely had different water rendering code for the different devices. Some were transparent, some were dithered, and some had no water at all. So wave images, Gumbler frames, simple sprites. Oh, these are the things that aren't Gumblers. It's just a few sprite routines there. Oh, actually, there's not much in that at all. That's probably the superclass. Actually, I'll tell you what it is. The MIDP code is all in the base class because they're the lowest common denominator, and it's the other ones, the MIDP2, for example. We should find some actual rendering code in here. Here we go. Now we've got some actual alpha rendered water. So we can actually. This is actually looks like it's generating an image, generating an RGB image. PNG using various levels of alpha on the bitmap. Let's see, we've probably got some Gumbler frames. One of the things you could do with MIDP2 you couldn't do with MIDP1 was render sprites in various mirror and flip transformations. So in MIDP1 you had to basically create all the sprites and mirror them, flip them yourselves, and then render them normal. Whereas MIDP2 you could pass a parameter to the sprite rendering code, or the image rendering code, that said draw this flipped horizontally or vertically or whatever, rotated as well. Here we go, MIDP2 graphics.draw region, graphics being the MIDP2 API. Oh wow, my SlickEdit here can pick up all the old Java comments, very nice. API, draw fishes, lots of other stuff. Oh, there's some triangles. Oh yeah, well yeah. So we use draw triangle to render a bunch of the tiles, and I obviously labelled these with numbers, type 1, 2, 3 and 4. There's a lot of code here. I did count the number of lines at some point, but I've forgotten what the actual number was. Hell of a lot. It took me months to write. Let's have a quick look at some of the resources while we're in here. So that's the code. There is, oh, here's the targets. Here's an interesting interesting bit of information. So all of these mobile phones were ones that we supported when we launched the game. There may even be more after this that I haven't got the code for. There's lots of Sony Ericssons down there, lots of Samsungs, lots of Nokias. How many of them are there? So we had to make hundreds of different SKUs, all with different parameters in. I mean, 102. If I have a look at one of these XML files, it will probably tell me a little bit about the build. Can we do this? Is it going to open it? No, it's not, is it? Let's do this instead. AquaStax targets. Let's just open up Motorola Razr. There we go. So this gives us some information about what it can and can't do, and what the various settings it should be are. So it has to use MIDP2 graphics, blah blah blah. Anyway, all of these config options go into the build process to generate the build for each individual device. So another thing I had with AquaStax was a lot of tools that I wrote. So I wrote tools to do all sorts of things. So we've got all these tools. I can't remember what Collide was. I think it was just some test code I wrote for colliding triangles. Designy, don't know what that is. All sorts of stuff going in there. I think that might be possibly a bill or a way to generate the design tool, so that the designers could test out levels and do things. Fonty was a tool for packing up fonts. Pointy, no idea what that was. Scripty, that's the big one. Scripty was my scripting component that allows all of the levels to be written using script files. I've probably got some script resources somewhere. Let's go and have a look in the resources folder. Here we are, scripts. So each level of AquaStax, and there were 50 of them in the biggest versions, was defined by a script, which had all sorts of things in it that define how the level looks, what the water does, what tiles it uses, where the hazards are, so things like the birds and the insects, how many Gumblers there were, and the blocks that are present on the level when you first start, and they have blocks and tiles and things. So they're all set up like that, and Scripty is the tool I wrote to read those files and parse them and generate some blobs of data. So we're going to have to delve into some of these tools at some point in the coming weeks and months, because I'm probably going to need to use all this old data. Where else did we go down? We're looking at the J2SE. J2SE Java 2 Standard Edition, that's the desktop environment of Java. Hi Dan. Daniel_Foster has just joined and said hello. Sorry, there's not a lot of code going on at the moment. This is just my preliminary stream. I'm probably going to stop in about 15 minutes and then schedule another one sometime in the future. I may not wait as long as next week. I've been quite enjoying myself so far, so we'll try and schedule one a bit earlier than next week. I hope this time of day is okay for people. I was tempted to do it in the evening time in UK, but that would probably end up being, onerous on my part. Too many things happen in the evenings. People can always come back and watch the streams afterwards, I think, anyway. What else did we do? Spritey. So Spritey was another tool that generated the huge number of sprites, frames and animations for the Gumblers. Let's see, it was basically a parser and stuff. Let's look at the sprite frames for the Gumblers. Down in the resources here we have sprites. So the Gumblers came in different sizes for different mobile phones, small, medium and large, and the Gumbler animation frames were all PNG files, and there are loads of them here. Let's see if I can make this a bit bigger. Can I zoom in? No, I don't know how to use a Mac probably. View. We'll leave it like that. You can see what they are. So here's all the Gumbler animation frames, and they were all PNG files. Purple being transparent background. That's actually RGB value FF00FF. Using 12-bit. There's no alpha in that. So there's no actual transparency in these. Just that was loaded in. Let's have a quick look at that. Can I zoom in on this one? Yeah, I can. There we go. So these sprites were all lovingly drawn by one of our artists, a very good friend of mine who I still see a lot of, and the animations themselves are all looped in. There's one of them somewhere eating a chicken. Oh, there's the fishing one. There's the chicken eating one. Excellent. We like that. AquaStax is the name of my game. Yes. If anyone queries the legitimacy of whether or not I'm allowed to make a new game called AquaStax, then it may not be AquaStax at the end of the day. It used to be AquaStax, and that's what I know it as. And I should probably still call it that, even if I'm not allowed to officially use it. Because it's not like I'm remaking some game that's 30 years old. It's actually not that old, but it's pretty much forgotten now, I think. Anyway, I was going to quickly show you the resources for the sprites themselves. So they're all the sprite frames, and the actual animation resources is a text file, which the Spritey tool processes, and you've got dozens and dozens. So there's FF0FF, or FF being hex for 255. You've got lots of sprite frames for the walking, and then mirroring them for backwards, climbing, hand over hand, standing, sitting, eating things, lots of frames. Then we go down to defining all the animation states, lots of states, Gumblers doing things, timing out. They did a lot of stuff. If you didn't build a wall they could climb very easily, they would sit around and just kill time by eating and fishing and looking around and waving at you. It's pretty cool. The booty, that was a dance. We'll have a look at that. Oh, the jiggy and the booty, I can never remember which ones are which, but they were definitely little dances the Gumblers did. And the animations themselves were defined using little blocks of code like this, and it references frames, and the tool actually had a way of jumping between animation states using key presses, so you could test it all out. So the walking right animation could turn into the right climbing, or the right turning, or the sitting or standing, and all these animations bouncing. Here we are. So here's falling animation. So the Gumblers would spin end over end if they fell down, if you broke the stack underneath them. And eventually, when they'd hit the ground, they'd bounce. So the falling animation can transition to bounce. And then there's a get up animation, shake head, all sorts of. Basically, this is the entire animation state machine. And of course, back in the day, we didn't have tools that did this for us. So I wrote it all, made all the tools myself. So that's going to take quite a bit of time to figure out how all that works. If I can reuse the old tools, I probably will. I'm not going to write all this in JavaScript. It's only the runtime engine that I'm going to rewrite. Let's see, is there anything else? Oh, there's some graphics in here as well for the levels. So, sorry, not the levels. It's some of the backgrounds. Okay, these are good. So AquaStax had 5 different level types. There's the alien industrial landscape. Sorry, the alien landscape. Let's have a look at that. Very lovely old pixel artwork. The industrial level. There were some awesome sound effects that went with this as well, and I've got MP3s and MIDI audio. I think probably some WAV files. I may or may not be able to use those. Be good if I could. There's the industrial level. Let's have a look at the island level. This is the first one you come across. This is the sort of basic level. We can reuse all this stuff. So my plan is to reuse all of these graphics and resources as they are, but make sure that the code can scale up so that obviously what size is this? 248 by 416 pixel wide image isn't really going to cut it on a on a big PC display, but scaling it up will, although it'll look a bit pixelated. But if I scale it up, then make sure that the code can render either an image scaled or an actual image at the right size. It can we can drop in some new graphics at the end of the day. If I can persuade one of my artist friends to redraw some of these at bigger resolutions, then we can get a nice crisp looking game. Let's just go into the other ones because these are great to see. I mean, this is all pretty visual. Sorry there's no code at the moment, but we'll get to that in future streams. As I said, this is literally my first ever live stream. Never done one before, so it's all a learning experience for me. Any feedback greatly appreciated as well. First thing I'm going to try and do is get hold of a decent microphone, and one that doesn't pick up my keyboard clicking. I shall actually get to do a bit of typing. 5 minutes to go, or let's say 10 minutes before the end of the stream, and I'm going to start doing an actual bit of typing because that's what you guys came here to see. So we have a sample app. Oh, what's going on? SlickEdit quit unexpectedly. Lovely. Honestly, it doesn't do that very often. Sometimes it does. We'll load it up again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a project. Now that I actually have, let's close that, don't save. Look at it as detected unsaved files. Yeah, we can ignore those. I'm not doing much at the moment. What I want to do is create a few files in my AquaStax project folder, and I'm going to submit some of the, or commit these to GitHub as well at the end of the day, so they're in there. We had a quick look around here. Let's see if I can change the loading of the splash screen. And what we're going to do at the beginning of the next stream is I shall have myself a good look at the old code, and we're going to start from the beginning. Might as well start with the splash screens of the original game, getting something on the screen that bounces down and shows the game logo, and then jumps into the game menu, although I don't expect we'll get as far as the actual menu, it'll just be a placeholder. Cocos2d-JS has this concept of scenes, and each scene is like your bit of the game. So you've got your splash screen. There'll probably be multiple scenes, one for each splash screen. The game splash screen, the publisher, the developer, whoever, or it may just be one scene that cycles through different images. Once that's completed, by the looks of it, it probably jumps into the main scene. oh no, this is there is only one scene at the moment and a hello world. We'll end up with a second scene that's the main menu, and then a bunch of other scenes. The high level structure of the project will kind of start to flow from that. And once we've just done a few things early on, like get some graphics on the screen, get some structure into the system, we can start just like knocking out the code as we go. I haven't made a plan for this. I'm not doing this as a commercial project. I'm not doing it as anything that's going to be sold or make money from or be secret. All the code's going to be on the internet, and basically just going to have fun doing it. I've got a few notes, got my book here. I always write down stuff as I go, and we'll see how it ends up. So what was I going to do? I was going to get a new graphic on the screen, wasn't I? So we are going to ditch this hello world graphic, and I'm going to put the AquaStax splash screen in. So we're going to go into the old resources and find an original splash screen. Graphics, might as well use all of the large ones. In fact, I might get rid of some of these smaller ones because we're not going to use those. Unless, is there a, what's in data? Sprites, script and language. I wondered if there was a separate splash screen. AquaStax, well there it is, AquaStax splash. Quick look at that. Right. So a lot of PNGs. I used to use PaintShop Pro for all my PNG editing. I think it was PaintShop Pro version 7. Used that for years. Still got it on my PC, and will probably go back to that if I ever get stuck on anything. I actually have Pixelmator, or maybe it's pronounced Pixelmator, I don't know. But we're going to use that as I go along. I found this to be an awesome tool. Bought it from the website. There's also a Mac App Store version of it. It does all sorts of great stuff with pixel art and imagery, and with any luck I can load these in. Graphics, I didn't want that one. I wanted large, and I want to go for the splash screen. So we'll be able to do things like scale this up, do editing if we need to, change transparency. Quite Pixelmator is probably overkill. I mean, it's pretty much like Photoshop, but it'll do the job for us, I hope. But that'll be a bit of a learning exercise as well, because I'm not an expert at using that. At some point I'll probably end up creating a virtual machine and installing Windows on it and then running PaintShop Pro inside that, because PaintShop Pro, at least the early versions of PaintShop Pro before they were bought out by whoever bought them out, were really nice to use. Anyway, we want this, I want to copy it, I'm going to stick it into the resources. Get rid of that. We don't need hello world anymore. Delete. Let's leave that as it is and find where it loads the. Actually, yeah, we'll do the code first, and I'll arrange it as a project. So I need to find where that splash screen is loaded. Is it loaded in there? Oh, look at that. That's a lovely pre-generated file for me. So one of the things SlickEdit does is it beautifies your source code for you, just how you like it, as long as it's not too funky a format. There we go. Is there anything in here? Ball and unball. I think this is the loading screen, actually, isn't it? It's not the splash screen itself. So this is what I'll do is I'll format this properly in a minute. Let's go back to that. Okay. Resource.js, that might be it. Aha, here we are. This is the resource. This looks like it gets loaded by the loader. So somewhere we had a load screen, didn't we? It was in main, wasn't it? Main.js. So yeah, loader scene preload. My guess is g_resources. That's going to load things that are stuck in here. So this is just all of these. So let's just do. So there's probably a lot of keyboard noise while I'm typing because my webcam is going to be picking it up. I'm going to have to sort that out. Any advice on how best to do audio for this kind of thing? Greatly appreciated. I imagine it's going to be some kind of mic on a boom which is attached to my cupboards up here, so it's not actually directly attached to the desk. Anyway, AquaStax splash screen, is that the right name? AquaStax splash screen, yeah, it is. I should just be able to reload this, shouldn't I? Run it again. There it is. Right, we'll sort out that transparency at a future date, and let's change this text back to AquaStax. So if I save it, jump back, reload, Apple R, reload. No, that hasn't reloaded it. Neither's that. Okay, so this is where we get the lovely caching issues. It's probably Safari. If I open up the web inspector, that might tell it to not cache. Nope. Well, there's an exception there. It's always great when boilerplate code throws problems out to you. It looks like one can be safely ignored. So let's see why this isn't reloading. This is going to come and bite me in the arse in the future, isn't it? Usually, when you have the debug window open, it stops all caching. Although there might be an option for that somewhere. Tell you what, let's not waste time. Let's just dive into Chrome and do it instead. Let's do it. There we go. Has that just loaded up Chrome? Yeah, it has. So it's not done anything. Oh no, here it comes. It's just taking its time. I bet if I go back to Safari now, it will probably reload correctly. So that's about all we've got done so far, but at least it's something. We've got a graphic on the screen. So there's hello world _png. We've got a bit of text. We'll get some fonts later on. Nice bitmap fonts. Now let's create a project in SlickEdit so I can come back to this at a later date. Nice and easily. Project new. Project name. AquaStax. Project AquaStax. Is it going to go in there? Do I want to commit this to GitHub? I probably don't actually at the moment. What I'm going to do is I will build tools which allow you the program in the game to be built on a command line. So we don't actually, nobody needs a specific editor or IDE to run this thing in. So I'm not going to commit my SlickEdit project files to GitHub. So I'll actually put them project name. Now, is this going to do what I think it does? Is this going to create a new file in there? It says the project will be located at there, at project SlickEdit. Sorry, projects AquaStax. Oh, specify project type. JavaScript. Oh, actually, no, we're going to do other. You specify a project type, it automatically generates a whole load of boilerplate stuff for you again. Don't want any files yet. Here it is, we've got other files, so we're not going to need these. I'm going to delete and get rid of these. Bitmaps, no, I'm going to organise this exactly how I want in my own way as we go along. Source files, no, I'm going to call it add a folder. I'm going to call it main. This isn't actually adding a folder on the file system, this is just a virtual folder inside SlickEdit's project environment. And we're going to add some files. So what we want is these ones in here. We want main, index, project, well, we don't want those ones. Holding down the Mac key, there we go. Project.json, we want readme as well, don't we? Open those up into the main folder. And I'm going to want another one. Let's just remind myself of the project structure. I hope the screen here is big enough. I might have to increase the font on my projects window because that's going to be a bit small. With any luck, it'd be okay for now, but I'll increase that for the next stream. Don't want to go back doing that now. Where was I? I was looking to see. So we got a source folder. So this is the default folder structure that Cocos, the command, built for me when I created a new project. We'll go with it for now. There's a whole load of stuff in frameworks. This is going to be the Cocos2d-JS, the Cocos2d-HTML5. This is probably where the boilerplate stuff comes from, ccboot.js. That came out of the index.html, didn't it? Well, that was called from within index.html. There it is. That. So you load your own code first, and then you go into boot, and probably somewhere it automatically pulls out game canvas. Actually, no, it does main.js, doesn't it? And that drives the actual startup sequence. We'll dig into that a bit more as the stream goes on in the coming weeks. Find that. So I'm going to ignore that for now. I'm not going to commit that to GitHub either, I don't think. They'll probably end up somehow refactoring that out into a different folder at the end of the day. There's lots of different ways of doing Cocos2d-JS projects. I'm sure we'll learn all that as we go along. We've got resources. There's actually a source file there. I'm going to leave that for a minute because that looks like it's auto-generated by something. I suspect I will not worry too much about that in terms of actual editing the code. And we're going to want these ones, and we'll put them in our source folder. Add a folder, call it source, and then we add the files. Now, I've been talking for an hour now and I haven't had a drink. Finished my cup of tea. Everyone in this country lives on tea. At least I do. So we've got resource. That's manually created, isn't it? And then we've got app.js here. So now I've got my project structure inside SlickEdit. I can quit that. Restart SlickEdit again at a later date. And we're back where we're going. Now, what I'm going to do is figure out how I can do things like the rebuilding and the reloading of the project. I mean, this run command is simply running a web server on a local port in a directory, and it loading off of the HTML file. There's loads of ways of doing that. I'm going to set up probably Grunt, which is a Node JavaScript based sort of automation tool which allows you to automatically watch for when files change, rebuild things, rerun commands on them to package up resources or do whatever. Do it basically all automatically for you, so that we shouldn't have to worry about automatically rebuilding or running all this thing as we write code. And at some point I'm going to build in the production the release procedures for actually minifying all the code, bundling it up and sticking it on a web server. Probably, if I'm doing anything the way I've done things in the past, I'll just create some kind of Docker based image which gets built automatically, and then you can just bung that on Amazon Web Services and run it. That'd be pretty cool. The microphone is fine, thanks very much. Well, no need to spend too much money then. See how it goes going forwards. I haven't been doing a lot of typing. I found when I was testing this out just by recording myself, the keyboard clickies come out pretty loud. I guess it depends on how much I'm doing typing and talking at the same time. I might do a bit of that now, just so I can watch the stream back a bit later on and see. So I'm going to. How do you go about testing the game on a Sony Ericsson device? Well, back in the day, if you were lucky, your old devices had emulators which were usable, and the emulators never really mirrored the phones perfectly. They were always, the performance of the emulators was always a lot better, so you had to test the games on the phones. If you were lucky, and I think Sony Ericsson was a good manufacturer, their devices allowed you to debug and build and execute games on the phones using a USB cable. So you could just plug the phone into your PC, stick stuff onto it using USB, and then test it really quickly. And you would get proper performance testing out of that as well. If you tried it in the emulator, you could easily write code that was way too slow to run on an actual device. Many of the manufacturers didn't do that. You had to actually build a JAD file, or sorry, a JAD and a jar file, which is the archive of your source code, upload that to an actual web server, and then on the device you had to actually browse, download it, install it, and then start testing it that way. So the actual build and then on-device run cycle could be minutes. And I seem to remember the Samsung phones had this really great music they used to play while you were downloading. It sounded like lift music or elevator music. Yeah, Sony Ericsson were good ones though. Anyway, I'm not planning on building this project for those old phones. This is just going to be modern smartphones and the web. I should be typing while I was doing this, but I don't know what to type at the moment. I don't really want to do anything. I know what I was going to do. I was going to submit stuff to GitHub, wasn't I? So let's examine. Yeah, we've gone over the hour. I don't suppose it matters too much at the moment, as long as I'm having fun. What I'm going to do is quickly look at the project, see what I want to submit to GitHub. Here's my README file. That says nothing in it at the moment. We'll update that. these are that's my SlickEdit project and workspace files. Really, I don't want to submit that. All I'm going to do at the moment is just submit some of these files here, and that way we can have it in the system. GitHub, what do I want? SmartGit. I like SmartGit. Use the command line as well, of course, but SmartGit does the job, and it's multi-platform. I use so many different tools that are multi-platform, running on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, because I jump between them all the time. So we don't want frameworks. We're going to git ignore that. Do you want to git ignore the directory frameworks? Yes. Let's see. We've got source and res. These are untracked. We want to git ignore the DS store file. I want to ignore as a pattern. Yeah. That one. We want to stage those. We want to stage those. And there should be some. Here we are. So I got two git ignore files. I probably did the wrong thing there, didn't I? Let's see. We want resource.js. We want the readme's already in. Project.json, definitely want that. What stage? Apple T, right. Manifest web app, yeah, we're going to need that, I suspect, aren't we? Main loading index CMake. Now that's possibly something that Cocos2d uses in its tool chain. I haven't used CMake a lot myself. It's a pretty low level build tool. That doesn't look like there's a lot of generic, a lot of specific stuff in there for my project. So I'm going to leave that out of GitHub for now. I can always put it in later on. AquaStax splash screen. What's that doing in the root directory? Did I put that in the wrong place? It should be in res, shouldn't it? Oh, it is relative directory. I didn't look at that. That's added. That's added. Git ignores. Yeah, actually I want to add those, don't I? And .cocos project. My guess is we don't need that. That's a dot file, so it's probably going to be unused. Right. Let's commit. No, not that one. Where's my local changes? Let's go back to there. I've been using SmartGit on my PC for some private stuff. And on my Linux box, but this is the first time I've stuck it on a Mac, so I probably don't have the right Windows open. I want to know what I'm about to commit. I just want to do a git commit. Let's see what that does. There we go. This has got the files in it. Right. So boilerplate. Hello world project created. What did I do? I used Cocos new. Cocos new -LJS with the command commit, and yeah, we'll bang it up. Hopefully that'll go in. At some point I will make sure I hook up SlickEdit to GitHub as well. It may even automatically be done. No, it's not. I have to let's see, Git, yeah. I've used Perforce a lot in the past, so all our commercial stuff I've done over the years has been Perforce, which is a great tool. But Git is the way to go if you want open source and community interaction. So let's just see what happens. Setup. User bin git. Ooh, did that even work? Tools. Version control. Okay, so it recognises some stuff. Let's see if I can look at the history. Oh, actually, what I want to do is change something. So, hello world layer. Let's add another bit of text in. So, the hello world label. Let's have a new one of these. Hello world. Let's stick it on the screen. Hello world. Read love by Steve Longhost. Make that a bit smaller. 24. X and Y. What's the size? Window size. Okay, so that is going to be window size divided by 2, middle of the screen, and window size divided by 2 plus 200. That's going to be at the top, isn't it? So I think the Cocos2d coordinate system is 0, 0 in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So we will, I don't know, just stick that for divide by 2 plus 200, and let's do minus 200 and see where it comes. And then we stick it in, add as a chart. So the Cocos2d uses the node type system. It's basically a scene hierarchy. You create nodes which are all subclasses of CC node, so sprites, labels, images, non-visible things like physics objects and sound effects and all that kind of stuff. They're all nodes. You stick them into a hierarchy, a tree-like structure. So we're adding a child of this being the layer itself, the hello world layer. Let's stick our new one in. This .add child Steve label. 5, I think, is the what's the word for the priority of the node, the layer where it appears. Now let's see, we don't have any help coming up with SlickEdit. One of the things I can do at some point is probably get SlickEdit to pull in all the source code for Cocos2d-JS and give me lots of nice inline help. I'm pretty sure that's the Z ordering, so these are going to go either above or below, whether it's positive or negative, the image. But I'll leave it at 5 for now. Let's go back to Chrome, see if we reload it. Is it Apple R for reload? Yeah. It takes a bit of time in Chrome. I guess it's loading all of those images and stuff. Yeah.